Hi everyone, welcome to the Meridian Learning and Development Hangout. I'm Allison, and today we're going to be discussing organizational cat herding and how to get teams on board with compliance. Today I'm joined by Kris Dunn and John Whitaker from Fistful of Talent, who have a few insights and opinions on the topic. There's just a few housekeeping items that we need to take care of before we get started. We want this session to be as interactive as possible, so if you have questions or comments, put them into the right side of your screen in the Q&A section, or tweet them using the hashtag L&D Hangout. All right, Kris, I'm going to kick it off to you.
All right. Thank you, Allison. Hey, everybody. Kris Dunn, Fistful of Talent, work at a place called Kinetics, and we're talking about organizational cat herding today. I'm happy to be joined by the esteemed Jonathan, I just call him John Whitaker, coming to us from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. John, what's up?
I'm representing the 817 out here, bud.
So you got to tell us, your office is cooler than mine. Tell us about the guitar.
That's a byproduct of a silent auction. That's a Rolling Stones signed guitar frame that I got for 700 bones.
Wow.
I know.
700. So obviously that wasn't the Keith Richards guitar. That was some like extra with the Stones.
Probably that's a Ron Wood guitar.
Is it a Ron Wood guitar?
It's a Ron Wood.
Awesome. All right. Well, John, thanks for joining us. You know, the reason I wanted John to join us on this hangout is John, it's got a long history in the world of HR, and what we're talking about, like on behalf of Meridian today, is there's a lot of occasions where HR professionals like you, like John and I, have some type of initiative. And in that initiative, we've got to either drive all of the people in our organization through some type of online tool or some type of subset. But usually it's everybody. And it's usually a big macro training event or some type of macro event where we've got to have everybody line up and sign in because we've got to get to 100% completion. And we're going to talk about some of the best practices to do that. I think some of you know some of them. Hopefully we'll give you a good idea or two. So John, let's start here. Let's kind of like level set where people would actually use kind of the psychology of what we're going to talk about. The first thing that comes to mind, I'll give two examples and I want you to pitch in. First thing that comes to mind, a non-training event, just to get your head around this as an HR pro, is open enrollment for benefits, right? Too often, you know, every year, like we want to force everybody positive and we want them to sign like yes or no, do you want benefits? Before we even get into Obamacare and everything like that. Do you want our benefits? That's one event. I guess on the training side, which is really where Meridian comes into play, John, I always think about things like, you know, harassment training, where you get the cheesy video, maybe some video and slides. You answer a couple of questions on what did that supervisor do wrong to really set it up to get himself or herself, but usually it's a him. What did they do wrong to get themselves sued on behalf of the company? Everybody's got to go through that. So harassment training is one. Any other examples you can think about from your experience, John?
You know what? You have a lot of, it depends on the industry, but you know, for instance, if you're in healthcare, there are several mandatory trainings you'll have on a yearly basis that might have to do with pharma rules or ABA guidelines.
Right.
There are things that are required by the law. Remember, we went through what was it, Sarbanes-Oxley for a while, and everybody had to do that.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. But yeah, depending on the group and the industry, it's going to keep happening. And sometimes compliance is not a matter of will you please; it's a matter of you must or.
Hey, John, I've got a question for you. In harassment training, why does the perpetrator, the harasser, as I'll call it, and it's never a woman, it's always a man because that's how it works in like real life most of the time. Why does the harasser never look like John Hamm from Mad Men?
We don't hear about those.
We don't. You know, it's kind of interesting, and that's probably why we need lady representation on here. Allison, unmute for a second and come in here. Why does harassment training, why does the perpetrator, the harasser, if you will, never look like John Hamm, or you plug in the name of a hot guy? Why does it never look like that guy?
How about Kris Dunn?
Well, I don't know, maybe they're trying to torture you. You're already having to do the training, and then you're just like this. There's just some grumpy person that you. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it.
Okay, well, thank you. That's the female representation.
You're trying to make it worse and worse for you to get through that 30 minutes of training.
No, let me give you the answer because you don't believe it. You never believe that John Hamm would act creepy, and even if he did act creepy, it might be a little more tolerable than if the Finkelstein that they usually have on the video acts that way. So I think that's the answer. All right, so let's say you've got to get somebody through. We'll give you 3 examples, like harassment training. Got to put everybody through that because you had some type of legal action, and one of the things you're going to do is you're going to run everybody through that again. Maybe to John's point, you've got some type of healthcare, whether it's HIPAA compliance, things like that. John, one other one I've got for you, and a lot of people who will watch this in the future will think about safety training. You've got that CVS background, right? And wasn't that like distribution?
Right. Yep. Safety training is a big one. You know, you have that ties into your insurance rates and your liability and your risk management. So yeah, you have a lot of that as well. And believe me, it's torture.
Yeah. So quick reset. John Whitaker, Kris Dunn from Fistful of Talent, talking about organizational cat herding, how you get people through those online trainings and get to 100% compliance. So John, those are the 3 examples. We got like HIPAA training in healthcare, and there's like hundreds more. Safety training in a distribution center, harassment training everywhere. So you're set up, you get that order on your desk as an HR pro, and you've got to move everybody through the organization through that training. So we're going to talk now in the remaining time. We've got about 12 or 13 minutes. We're going to talk about nothing but our best ideas on how to herd everybody through that. And John, I'm going to flip it to you. You're my guest as well as an FOT team member. Give me the first idea that comes to your mind, best practice in terms of making sure, whether they want to or not, doesn't matter, making sure you get to 100% completion on that type of training.
Let's start with transparency. I think that,
hold on, what?
Yeah, I know.
Transparency?
Transparency.
Okay, this is interesting.
You know, we had, I can think of one specific example with CVS. We had a training. We were moving to an online goal setting process. And so goals had to be in by a certain time. And we were managing an employee group of about 20,000 people at the time. So it's not like you can call them.
Right.
So what we did is we had a running scoreboard, a dashboard, when people would complete it, that updates were going out. And we had one email at the beginning of the day, so-and-so has completed. And then at the end of the day, this is a list of the people who have not completed. So you've got the sort of the motivation up front. You want to be on the green list, and then you have, I think you called it the walk of shame at some point. You know, at the end, you really want to start having it transparent. If you want to see your name on that list every day, then by all means keep resisting, right?
So what I like about that, so you said transparency. So I thought you were going like, hey, we're going to hug this thing out and tell you the reason why we're doing this. Turns out not so much. Transparency in the fact of who's actually completed it and who are the transgressors who haven't completed it. So I'll give you an idea that I love. So you had 20,000 people. So a lot of times it's hard to put all the names out there, right?
Absolutely.
That's kind of a hard thing to do. One of the things I love, because I think when you get in an organization with hundreds or thousands of people, to your point, you can't touch them all. You're lucky if you've got like one communication system like email that could reach everybody. And a lot of these organizations, that's not even the case. So one of my best practices that I absolutely love is what I'll call the leader scoreboard. So you mentioned scoreboard. I would go leader scoreboard, like, and let's say you've got a 2-week window where you're doing this. And we're going to talk about time frames in a second too, I think. But let's say you've identified there's a 2-week window where everybody's got to get through this and complete the training in question. Well, I wouldn't start scoreboarding because we know, and John, I think I'm going to throw it to you, and I want you to talk about this after we kind of finish up the scoreboard conversation. But we know that 80% of the activity happens towards the end. So if I had a 2-week window, I probably wouldn't waste my bullets from a recognition perspective. I wouldn't want them to get used to the scoreboard, but what I would do, probably 5 days, with 5 days left in the training, I would probably go scoreboard organizationally. It might be department leaders. If I was at a single location, it might be all the managers of people, and I would scoreboard those people out, and I would put the percentage of completion across their teams with the people that report to them Really so, because, my experience, all those people are driven people that manage those departments and manage the teams. And especially if you don't have one mode of communication for everybody, like especially in distribution centers where they might have to go to a kiosk of sorts. I mean, I know we've got a lot of tablets floating around, but those aren't the reality in a lot of America. I really like that leadership scoreboard and let them figure out how they're going to drive it to 100%. John, have you had experience with that?
Yeah, on a smaller scale, we had a horse race. Basically, it is by leader, and they were the horses, and so you would show the.
So you gamified it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I know that's a buzzword now, but yeah, we made it a horse race, and so you can see your team's progress on the track, and you don't want to be the nag at the back that gets shot at the end of the race.
So everybody drink. We said gamification twice.
Damn.
Okay, so drink up. John, look at John's energy drink. That's sweet.
That's actually some Texas moonshine right there.
I'm sure it is. So we like the scoreboards. We like the leadership scoreboard. John, you had some thoughts related to the time period that you actually allow people to do these things. So, as HR people, I think we're infamous for wanting people to do these things over a 2 to 3 week period. Like, we'd like to launch the platform. I think you've got some thoughts that may not be the right way to do it. Is that correct?
I'd say half that.
Okay, so what's your ideal period?
I think a week, 1 work week, five business days. Because even then you're going to get Thursday and Friday is when the people are, if you give them 2 weeks, like you said, 80% of the activity is going to be the back end of week 2.
Right.
You're just delaying the inevitable. And I also think whenever you have a weekend that's in between, momentum takes a hit. Yes. So any momentum that you might get, I think, takes a hit.
Okay. So announce it on Monday, finish it up on Friday. So what we've talked about so far, and I think it's indicative of my experience, is that we really want to, like, short a time frame as possible. We want to report on the status. There's a lot of different ways to do that, both overall and like by the leadership scoreboard. And let's talk about this, John. So what about incentives? So you gamified it. Drink.
Damn.
Yeah, get it up. There we go. So you gamified it, which I think is awesome. What about incentives? Is there any way to incentivize people for this? And I'm probably more of a stick guy with this than a carrot guy, because I'm not sure that anybody cares about any carrots I can provide for going through some type of compliance training, but it's a necessity. Any experience with incentives that have worked for you to drive large bodies of people through a program like this?
You know what? Normally the incentive is more along the stick side. You'd rather get it done than you would be, if you're going to get an extra jeans day, that's one thing. But if you're going to get called out in front of your peers, that tends to be a bigger motivator.
Okay.
A lot of this training is not necessarily going to be the most, lively, engaging experience. It's something that, it's like getting your kids to do their homework. You can reward them every time they do it, or you can let them fall and take a hit when they fail to do it.
So you think the incentive is the stick. I would tend to agree. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to throw a pizza party for the department that completes the harassment training first or the safety training first? I guess you could experiment with that. Would a pizza party motivate you, John?
No. You know what would motivate me is to have the losing manager's team have to do push-ups in the quad or something. So that would be cool.
I like that. So that's related a little bit to, you mentioned this earlier, the walk of shame. And the walk of shame, to me, there's no better way to get people through it. So when I talk to you a little bit about the leader scoreboard, my big thought there was leader scoreboard, whatever leader, these are all driven people for the most part. They all hate to be embarrassed, and they're used to scoreboards through operational reviews and things like that. So my big idea on the scoreboard is really a little bit of walk of shame at the managerial or leader level, right? Because if somebody's sitting on 63% on Thursday night of your 1 week campaign that ends Friday night, they're going to come out guns a-blazing on Friday. Right. And they're going to get there. And you probably want to report that at multiple points on Friday, the last day of the campaign, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could do something like I think we were using the term DEF CON. You could put them at DEF CON 2, DEF CON 1 as you're approaching the deadline. One other idea I had that I think might help too is we have these week-long periods. What if you as a company or you as an HR manager sent out invitations to people that block time on their calendar specifically dedicated to this? You made meeting requests that blocked out time on their calendar. That kind of gives them an excuse to do that instead of what other priorities they might have at the time, and
Yeah, I like that one. And you're capturing like a certain cross-section of people that are probably high rules and high details that are driven by their calendar. But that's good, right? Because what you're looking to do is drive people to get this done in different segments. So I like that a lot. I also like the walk of shame on an individual level, right? Which is basically publishing the list of people that are still out there. And you want to do that in as small of groups as possible because you want them to actually find their name and feel like they're like one of 20. So if you had like a work group of 100 people, you'd want to broadcast the 15 people that are left in that work group and try and send it only to that group. Or I guess you could do it across the whole employee population. So there's that too. But I do like the scheduling piece. Any ideas, John? We got about 3 or 4 minutes left. You got John Whitaker and Kris Dunn on behalf of Meridian Learning Systems and FOT talking about organizational cat herding. John, I like your idea about scheduling calendars because people are going to say, well, that's great. I'm going to do that at that time. I'm going to follow this link and away we go. What about the people that are low details or low rules? Is there any way similar to the calendar where you can reach them and make them want to complete? Is there any way to trick them into it?
A perfect group as an example is when I used to work with field-based sales.
Yes.
They're not there in the office, so they don't have to deal with the people walking by, right?
They're producing revenue, John. How dare you ask them to log in and complete your compliance-related item?
Right. Well, yeah, they're busy doing things that make the company successful. And to a large extent, they're true. Their time is money, and that's where you tie those types of things to their money. It can be, part of their annual. They usually have some either discretionary income, bonus income, that needs to be somewhere in their discretionary income calculation.
Yeah, it's a whole administrative thing because typically speaking, somebody that's bad at, let's say, making sure prospects are in Salesforce on the sales team is going to be generally crappy at getting your compliance-related item done. They're not going to value it at all. A couple more ideas I've got. We've got 2 or 3 more minutes, and then we're going to bring Allison in if there are any questions out there. And I've got one from the Twitter sphere already. But a couple other things that I had related to these compliance-related activities. First of all, it really helps if you've got a type of solution, even if it's not perfect for a mobile device. It really helps if you can drive the compliance-related event through a mobile device, right? Right. Because in the days of not unlimited data plans, but certainly fat data plans, there's a good opportunity there just for people to get it done on their own time. Now, the heavy compliance-related people, no pun intended, will say, well, Kris, is that work-related activity? And I'd say, you know what? It's all work-related activity. You can figure out how to pay them. I'm just here to drive people through your compliance-related program. So that's one idea. You want to make sure that whatever you're using hopefully is mobile in nature. And the other thing I would say, John, and we'll kind of end it with this. I'll get your comments and we'll bring Allison back in. Is for God's sake, have some fun. Make it light. If you've got any outtakes, and I keep going back to the harassment thing because I think it's fairly ubiquitous and it's something everybody can relate to. But if you've got any outtakes, or even if you don't have outtakes, if you can make fun of what they're going to see and get away with that in your company culture, do that. Because it'll make people want to see it and want to get into it. So if you've got that non-John Hamm person who is telling someone like Allison in a slightly creepy way, this is not me, this is just me saying this, okay? That non-John Hamm person in a slightly creepy way is complimenting Allison on her dress that day. And it makes Allison uncomfortable. If you can make fun of that, people are actually going to want to see just how bad that situation is. So I think you should have fun with it. John, I'll throw it to you for any Any thoughts on that? Any closing remarks, and then we'll bring Allison back in.
Well, I mean, who doesn't like to have a lot of fun in sexual harassment training? I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But I do think that with the technology available to us now, some of the creative things we can do, you can use your own people to make videos, and that makes it fun immediately. When people are watching, you do these little vignettes,
right.
And you do it for Kinetics HR, for instance, and you're starring in it, doing some of these ridiculous things.
Right.
They're going to be engaged from the start because they're going to think it's funny that you're in the actual video.
Or I'll give you, even if you can't control the end product and you don't want to go to that degree, get your phone out and do your own outtake, like from the training. Just do something totally outside, like the actual training that's relatable, that'll make people want to go into that and have some fun with you and see just how bad it is. All right, we're out of time. Hey, so, John, I'm going to say thank you to you. John Whitaker, HR Hardball, FOT, proud owner of a Ron Wood guitar, and he's got a Dirk Nowitzki picture right below that. He'll move his camera as where there's Dirk, number 41.
That's him. That's the man.
Yeah, the German legend. All right, Allison, come on back in. Any questions out there?
We don't have any questions. There's a couple of big ones that might take a little bit of time for us, so we can tackle those maybe after the session.
Okay.
But Dirk is the man, and what else do I have? We have another hangout scheduled for next month. It's called Make Your LMS More Than a One Night Stand, which should be very interesting. So I hope that you guys can all tune in for that. But thank you for taking the time to watch this today. All right. Bye, guys. And thank you guys for sharing all your information.
Thanks, Allison.
Thanks,
All right.
Allison. Later,
Bye, y'all.
Kennedy.